All right, everybody, it is time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you this hour by Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bet. It is the Inside the Birds podcast. It dropped today. It is the final Inside the Birds pre-training camp show, 90-minute show, the longest of all four with their special guest, Greg Cosell, and we'll get into that in just a second. But first, Adam Caplan is here from the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, how are you, my friend?
Mike, I'm good. Yeah, we did drop that show on Thursday morning. Remember, our show is dropped before this season starts because we're going to do 3 shows a week instead of 2 out season. But out of season, we're Monday and Thursday at 6 a.m. Eastern. Q&A are Quentin Michael, and Jason Avant are Wednesdays at 8 a.m. So we've got those shows up. And this one, and we've seen the early traffic numbers are enormous. This one, I don't want to say it's controversial, but our fans generally love Greg because he just tells it like he sees it, like his late uncle, Howard Cosell. It's all strictly from coaching tape. That's the old 22 tape. Old 22 really cannot be challenged. It's just what he sees. It's not making excuses because this didn't happen or that happened. Just what he sees. And look, the stuff, some of it's critical. Look, the Eagles are a bad football team last season. So it's not like it's going to be peaches and cream. So kind of that's what we saw there.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people said, yeah, this was a bad football team last year. Now, Vegas thought they were going to be a good football team last year. They predicted a 10-win season for this team last year. So we know some of the things that went wrong. But Doug Peterson kind of indicated in an interview yesterday that injuries, and then we didn't do this, and then he went back to injuries. So were injuries the number one reason why this team struggled so much?
Well, look, the quarterback play from Wentz, and I've said this, I don't know how many times, he should have been benched well before he was benched. He was horrendous. Now, I've been a huge Carson Wentz fan, but my job is to, when I put on the analyst hat, not the non-reporting hat, to tell people what I know and what I see. He was terrible. I mean, let's look, there were the reasons. Some was on him, some was on the coaching, some was on the offensive line, some was on the young receiver corps. That's fine. But from a performance standpoint, it was inexcusable the way that he played. It was not the Carson Wentz that we knew. Was injuries, as Peterson saying, a big factor in everything that happened? Yes. But the coaching wasn't good enough. Doug wants another job, okay? This is what coaches do when they're out. They're not going to criticize their former employer. He's never going to tell the truth about what really happened with Wentz. His relationship with Wentz, by the way, I'd love to hear him talk about that. He's not going to talk about that, nor should he. He wants to get another job. He's not going to talk about his relationship with the front office. He's not going to talk about why this didn't happen, that happened. He's not going to criticize himself or his own coaches.
Yeah.
So that's why you see his quotes the way they are, and I would expect nothing different. But one of the biggest reasons why they failed clearly was injury. But I also think, and this is something that I've sort of preached upon the last 4 to 6 weeks, the lack of player development from this former coaching staff was a joke the last couple seasons, where it looked like guys were developing, and then I don't know what the hell happened other than Josh Sweat, the couple other players, Greg Ward maybe. Miles Sanders has developed, but he didn't play as well as he did in 19. Overall, there's a reason why this team was bad, Mike. It's the lack of player development. That's a big thing.
Adam, Greg Cosell was on the podcast this morning. It is dropped right now. Critical but fair comments. He said, if I'm being totally honest, ... fill in the blanks on his comments on Jalen Hurts' performance last year in those 4 starts.
So, Mike, here's the interesting thing about Greg. You know, he does some work for our friend John Hansen at fantasypoints.com. So because Hurts for fantasy was really good, he wanted to make sure, in addition to obviously doing some work for Jeff Mosher and I, he wanted to go back and look at Hurts' starts because I know from talking to him last year after throw the Washington game out, that it was bad weather, the way the coaches handled that situation, pulling Hurts when they shouldn't have. They should have let him play the game or pull him at halftime, not pull him after the third quarter. That's ridiculous. But I know Greg liked his performance against New Orleans, just his initial when he watched last season. But he did not have time because when he's working producing the matchup show, he just doesn't have the time that he would normally have in the offseason. So he went back and went for the coaching tape of all of his starts. And I'm sure he probably looked at the Green Bay game when he came off the bench, so 4+ games. And he saw a lot of plays that were left on the field because Hurts sometimes to break the pocket and run. He wouldn't be patient enough. And this is what typically happens, either A, with a rookie quarterback, or B, with a rookie quarterback who comes later in the season where he hasn't had a chance to work with these players. Remember, Hurts did not have an offseason. I'm not making excuses. I'm just giving you reasons why he probably struggled a bit. But what I've said about Hurts is the one game, though, where you could take where he's really positive. The New Orleans game, he takes some individual throws. He did a nice job. But overall, he wasn't asked to do very much. That Arizona game, if you recall, the first drive, it looked really bad. He took a safety, which you can't do. I thought they get blown out in that game. Not only was he good in that game, he gave him a great chance to win. The defense collapsed, particularly against DeAndre Hopkins. The defense was terrible that game against Arizona. And that was in Arizona, by the way. But overall, what typically happens with a rookie quarterback is you go through 1.5 reads, and if you don't see what you like, you can run. Quarterbacks are never coached to go through one read. They're coached to go through your progressions, 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5. But also, you're not going to have 5 because that offensive line will only get 3. What Greg wanted him to do is not bail so much. And Greg was right because the coaching tape shows it. There were too many throws where there were too many opportunities there where he broke the pocket when he shouldn't have and moved when he shouldn't have. Which, by the way, if you grade the tape correctly, had very little to do with their offensive line. There were plays there. Greg would have mentioned it if it was an offensive line issue because that's what he did. He always points it out when he sees it, when he thinks it's an offensive line issue. It had nothing to do with him breaking the pocket. He just wasn't patient enough. But again, he was a rookie. The good thing about him playing, Mike, last season is you have that coaching tape. This new coaching staff was able to review that tape with him and go over it during OTAs and understand what he brings to the table. He's sort of a dual threat quarterback. He's a coach's son. He knows the way the game has to be played. It's obvious watching the tape. He left throws on the field. He knows this. So the great thing about it, Mike, is it's all correctable. But Greg was very critical. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was not expecting to be as critical. But I don't know. I've known this guy 20 years. I don't argue with the guy because it comes strictly from coaching tape, and he has no biases. It just goes by what the tape tells him.
Yeah, and the good part, too, as you mentioned, he got a chance to see the speed of the game in those 4 games, so that should be helpful as well. By the way, in that Arizona game, 24 of 44, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He did take 6 sacks. He did run 11 times for 63 yards and a touchdown. So I don't know. That shows you kind of like the ceiling of what he can be when he's playing well. So that's something to build on. Now, obviously, there's other throws that he did not make. That's the ups and downs of a rookie quarterback, regardless if you're Peyton Manning or Jalen Hurts.
You know, it's not that Hurts turned the ball over a lot, but Peyton Manning set a rookie record for most interceptions in the season for rookies. So you mentioned the Hall of Famer Peyton Manning. Look, it's something to build on. I'm glad he played. Like I'm really glad for the Eagles' sake that they have that tape to go over. Being a coach's son and being that he played for Nick Saban for transferring to Oklahoma, you know how serious he takes the game. Pretty good leader in the locker room. Although he's a quiet leader, guys flock to him. So this is good. Well, he knows what the issues are. Now, I will tell you, I've actually talked about this before. I did see in training camp when I went, because I really wanted to watch him a lot. He did a lot of breaking the pocket and not letting plays develop. But again, that's going to be different. I would be shocked if he doesn't let plays develop more because it's very correctable. And he knows it. It's nothing that Greg said surprised me, but I was expecting to hear more positive from him because he had more time to see it. But he did point out some positive things. But it was way more critical than I expected.
Let's go over to receiver because this is an interesting crew, and Greg broke it down and had some interesting things to say. Some analysis on Jalen Reagor, who, it's funny, Adam, everybody this time of the year, they're pumping out content. Who's the breakout player? Who's the top this?
Yeah.
Reagor seems to be a very popular pick for a guy to have a big second year, mainly because of all the rookie wide receivers. He had one of the worst years.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. Greg has been a big fan of his. I know this talking to Greg privately about Jalen Reagor because he was one of his favorite receivers for the 20 draft. We know he had 2 injuries last year. Yes, he didn't put up yards, but I'll give you a nugget here from our show. When you folks, you can watch it on YouTube or listen on or download it to your phone or your device. I do want to talk about Reagor. I'm glad you brought him up. Greg did say, and this is one of the advantages, which he didn't know during the season because he didn't have time to keep going through every play. He said Jalen Reagor looked super explosive on tape because that is why they drafted him. Time will tell. Right now, obviously, it looks like a mistake drafting him over Justin Jefferson, but the book isn't written, just like it wasn't written on Brandon Graham versus JPP. Now, obviously, the safety Earl Thomas is a different story, but if you remember, Mike, fans were killing them. Now, it wasn't just Earl Thomas. It was oh, JPP is a much better football player. Guess what? Brandon Graham's a better football player than Jason Pierre-Paul. It's not just production, it's consistency, it's injury history, it's everything. So the book is not written. So just be careful of saying the book is written on Jalen Reagor. You brought up a breakout season. Now what that determines, it's usually numbers related, but he looked explosive on tape. He got over the hand, the broken thumb. He got over the back. It was actually shoulder/back injury. Remember, that was a pretty significant injury in training camp when he tried to make a tackle. So that curtails a guy who had no offseason. He's had a good offseason, I'm told. We're told his weight's low 190s. I'm expecting a breakout season. Now, am I expecting 80, 90 catches? No. I'm expecting 60-plus catches from Jalen Reagor.
In listening to some of the things Cosell said on Fulgham real fast, he said, I like what I saw, can't speak to the work ethic, professionalism, or any of that. So, in other words, there were some rumbles that he didn't practice all that well, and maybe that was keeping him off the field. But it sounds like when he was on the field, Greg liked what he saw of him as a player.
Yeah, so what we'd reported first on Inside the Birds last November, we checked into why is he not playing? Why is Jeffrey playing over him? It seemed ridiculous. Part of it was that Doug Peterson made some cryptic comments late last season that I know what he was talking about because we already had the story. We knew that his practice habits, practice performance wasn't where it needed to be. It needed to be above the line, and it wasn't. He needed to bring the same attitude that he brought in those 4 games where the NFL receiving guards. They had a very young group other than Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. And now they're the one of 2 NFL teams to not have a vested veteran on their receiver group. So that's a concern. But I think if Fulgham knows it, he knows it. He's been cut 3 times, twice by Detroit and once by Green Bay. He knows it. He needs to perform, and he's very lucky they didn't draft a receiver with size, or he might be really pushed. It's not like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's going to take his job. That won't happen. But he has a chance to be a really good football player. That's the thing. He's gifted.
Yeah.
It's another guy that Greg talked about. He really likes him. And I don't want to if you listen to the show, you can hear exactly what he said. But he goes through that receiver core, man. He does an incredible job of breaking down their offense. We don't have an hour to talk about what he said, but I was somewhat encouraged in some areas, some I was not. Hurts is just a 4-game sample. It's just not enough. But we went into offensive defensive scheme also, which I thought was interesting. But this receiver course got a lot of upside, but they got to get it done though first. We got to see what they do.
Well, I'm interested to get his take on then the biggest competition at training camp, which will be left tackle Mailata Dillard. What did he think of does he think Mailata's the favorite here?
Yeah, he does like Mailata because I know from talking to Greg, he said he played really well against Baltimore and Pittsburgh, but he said the final 4 games he wasn't as good for whatever reason. We talk about that. We talk about I think we talked about Dillard briefly. I don't want to speak for him, so folks could listen to the show and hear exactly what he said. But it was sort of interesting because I had not heard that before. Part of this 90-minute show was Greg talked a lot of stuff about some stuff that he wasn't even aware of last season because he didn't have time to go through it. But we grilled him. I mean, we went through every single key player on this roster, just about. That's why the show was so long. And if you listen to our post-draft show with Greg, we didn't talk about this kid on this show, but Tui Pelotu, their 6th-round pick from USC. We might have, but I know this. On that show, the post-draft show, we talk extensively about him, and he really likes him. We talk about their issue at corner. And we talk about the new schemes, man. These new schemes are going to be completely different than they have run before under Peterson and Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, it's funny. The ESPN did a review, analysis of 50 execs, scouts, players, coaches, one of those offseason things. Darius Slay still in the top 10 at cornerback. I was a little surprised because most people thought he had a down year. How is he going to fit into the scheme? How's the scheme going to utilize him? Was the scheme not a good fit for him last year?
Yeah, they played a lot of man, and he could play man. But what happened is, against the guys who could really run and make plays, that's where individually it wasn't just the game against Metcalf where he struggled. There were other games where he gave up too many plays. See, here's what fans have to understand. When you're being paid $17 million a year, you're not supposed to have games like he had against Metcalf. I get that Metcalf is young and strong and could run. I get all that. but you got to win.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing that teams expect that when you're pay that kind of money, you got to win just about every time. When Darrelle Revis, and I understand he's not even close to as good as Darrelle Revis was, but Slay's a pretty good football player. Darrelle Revis said, bring it at me. Let's go. Until his last couple of years where his legs failed him, that's what you want. You want someone says, hey, bring your best against me. But Slay owned up to it. It wasn't like he didn't own up to it. As you know, he was pretty vocal about he's got to play better. Mm-hmm. But overall, he was good and not great. That's kind of what we know about Darius Slay.
All right. So you guys have been going over at Inside the Birds through all 4 NFC East teams. They are all recorded. They are all available now at Inside the Birds, wherever you get your podcast. So how does this division kind of shape up as we get to training camp just 19 days away?
Mike, it's really funny, and I knew this was going to happen. So I went in when we started taping these shows with Greg. I can't speak for Mosher, but I know my thought process was I'm probably going to learn about who the best teams are in this division, like who's the best team. I don't turn my picks into whatever polls I vote in until the first week of the regular season before the Thursday night game. I turn them in, but I could tell you right now, I'm leaning towards the Giants. I got to tell you.
Wow.
Hearing Greg, I know. Hearing Greg talk about hearing Greg talk about both the offensive defensive schemes, Patrick Graham's defense. Now Greg talks about Daniel Jones's third down throws. I get Jones is a problem. I get it. Last season, first 2 seasons, more turnovers and touchdown passes. I totally get that. But overall, there's a lot to like. And give Dave Gettleman, who I've criticized ad nauseum, give Gettleman credit. He's done a very, very good job with their scheme. Adding players to their roster. No doubt about it.
So you have them as your favorite. That's interesting because I think a lot of people like Dallas, right?
I have them right now. I'd have them number 2. See, my problem with Fitzpatrick is he implodes. I've talked to coaches who work with him who love the guy, but eventually he's going to want to do his own thing. And when you do your own thing, like Carson Wentz did, when he tries to go outside of the way the thing's being coached, you make mistakes. And that in the end, Mike, that is what I think will doom Ryan Fitzpatrick. I love watching him play with his energy, but asking him to start 70 games, good luck.
Yeah, we'll see. This should be interesting. 19 days away from training camp. Listen to the Inside the Birds podcast as they break all 4 division teams down, getting you ready for Eagles camp, which begins, as we mentioned, 19 days away. Now, I will throw this at you, Adam. Yesterday was 25 years the NWO formed. That is your entrance music for football at 4. So you have to, you're a big NWO guy, right?
I was. So very quickly here. So back in 1996, my nephew Sam Caplan and I and his brother John, the 3 of us, we rented the Bash to the Beach pay-per-view. So we watched it live, and we all tried to guess who the third man would be. None of us got it. I think one of us said it was Lex Luger. None of us guessed Hulk Hogan. And the funny thing is, and this is the infancy of the internet. Internet was basically about 2 years old by then. No one leaked it. There was no social media. And it was just shocking. We were so shocked that Hulk Hogan was the third guy because, he had not been a heel since 1980. I remember going to I'm old enough to remember I'm in maybe middle school. Maybe I was at Penn Charter then. I remember going to the Spectrum Wrestling to see Hulk Hogan fight Bob Backlund. Bob Backlund was the good guy, and Hulk Hogan was the heel. So this is how long, Hogan not being a heel is probably since 1981. And as you know, when he became the champion in 1983, he'd been a so-called babyface since then. And just to see it, and now, by the way, to hear the 83 Weeks podcast with Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson, you could hear them talk about it. But it was really cool. And then as you know, Mike, I went up working for WCW to ring the bell. I was there when Ric Flair left. I was there the night when Gary Capetta, who I don't know, but I need to talk to him at some point about this. When Gary Capetta, the ring announcer, had announced that Ric Flair was no longer with WCW. It was just, or he didn't show up. He's a no-show, and he was vacating the title. But I was there working the bell and as a timekeeper back in 1991. I mean, this is how long ago I go back with that thing. So I don't watch wrestling anymore, but I could tell you, that was super, super cool.
Well, at that time, right now, you mentioned the 83 Weeks, which I listened to a lot. Have you listened to the new Jeff Jarrett, My World?
I've not. The only podcast I listened to, because one of the reasons why I listened to the 83 Weeks podcast, because stuff you find out about when I was there, I always wondered about why they stopped doing house shows, because it didn't pay me very much. It might have paid me $50, $75 a night.
Yeah.
But I always wondered why did I lose my job? Because they stopped doing house shows.
Yeah.
Bischoff talked about.
Well, the latest Jeff Jarrett, My World, that came out this week was on it was the Bash at the Beach. They did that, and then the following night when they talked about the whole thing where he laid down, and they basically was Hogan's last night that he ever appeared in WCW. So all of this is kind of coming back out because it's 25 years. They're doing 25 years of like the NWO and all that stuff. So it's kind of fun.
It is awesome. That had to be my favorite night of wrestling. When I got to give Bischoff credit. I never would have guessed it. For those of you who don't like wrestling, you're not liking what Mike and I are talking about. But for those, most people were aware of Hulk Hogan. I mean, my wife knows who he is. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's
well,
not
I think a lot of the audience at that time would say, "I don't watch now," but then,
yes.
I know what you guys are talking about.
Well, I watch AEW because Tony Khan is a friend and Alex Marvez is a friend. Because of Tony running that thing. But overall, I'll watch a couple minutes here or there, but I don't really know what's going on anymore in wrestling.
Yep.
In fact, when Bischoff ruined the NWO by putting everyone in their mother, as I couldn't watch it. It was unwatchable. Yeah. And that Bischoff, it was really 99. I've probably at the end of 99, I stopped watching. So I couldn't tell. I know who like Goldberg is, and I know some of these people are, but I don't know anything about it.
Well, there you go. That is the genesis of the opening music for Football at 4 for Adam Caplan. It was 25 years ago yesterday. Bash at the Beach. Hulk Hogan drops the leg on the Macho Man, and he became the third member. I feel like the third member of Inside the Birds, Adam Caplan, Jeff Mosher, and, of course, Andrew will be here tomorrow. We'll continue our previews of the divisions. We'll go with the AFC West tomorrow with Andrew. He is Adam Caplan. And, of course, check out the Inside the Birds podcast. This week it dropped today with Greg Cosell on the Eagles. Adam, thank you, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, Adam Caplan here on the Football at 4. It is powered by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. All right, coming up, do you remember what happened on this day, July 8th? Well, we told you yesterday the NWO was formed. Find out what happened today, coming up next.